Prince Harry has just suffered the one legal result his entire campaign against the British tabloids could least afford. Not a technical setback, not a narrow defeat, not a judgment that offered him one small victory to place in front of the cameras. The High Court dismissed every claimant's case against Associated Newspapers, publisher of the Daily Mail and Mail on Sunday. The figure now dominating the conversation is 97 claims across the wider action. But the most devastating words appeared near the end of a 436-page judgment, where the judge stated that each claimant's claims had been dismissed. And that single sentence may carry consequences far beyond the courtroom. Because this case was never only about newspaper articles published years ago. For Harry, it was connected to his mother. It was connected to Meghan. It was connected to his belief that powerful sections of the British press had intruded into private lives, damaged relationships, and operated without meaningful accountability. But the court was not being asked to decide whether Harry's pain was real. It was being asked whether the allegations of unlawful information gathering had been proved. And after an 11-week trial, the answer was no. Now the question is no longer whether Harry won. He did not. The question is what this defeat will cost him financially, commercially, personally, and within the royal family. And the most dangerous part is that the final price has not yet been decided. Before we examine the consequences, tell us in the comments, was Prince Harry courageously confronting the press, or did personal anger push him into a legal battle he could not prove? Like this video if you believe even the most powerful people must be able to support serious allegations with serious evidence. Because by the end of this story, the largest threat facing Harry may not be the judgment itself. It may be what he chooses to do next. Harry was not the only claimant. The wider action included Baroness Doreen Lawrence, Sir Elton John, David Furnish, Elizabeth Hurley, Sadie Frost, and former politician Sir Simon Hughes. Together, they alleged that private information appearing in Associated Newspapers publications had been obtained through unlawful methods. The allegations included voicemail interception, deception used to obtain confidential information, landline tapping, and the alleged use of private investigators. Associated Newspapers denied the accusations and argued that its stories had been produced through lawful journalism, including contacts, public material, friends, publicists, royal aides, and confidential sources. The court's task was not to decide which side had the more emotionally powerful story. It had to decide whether unlawful activity had been established on the balance of probabilities. That distinction destroyed the claimant's case. Justice Matthew Nicklin concluded that private information appearing in a newspaper did not automatically prove it had been obtained illegally. In one of the judgment's most important principles, the court rejected the idea that information must have been unlawfully acquired simply because it was private, and the precise source could no longer be identified decades later. Suspicion was not enough. Privacy was not enough. The claimants still had to prove the unlawful act, and the court found that they had not done so. That is what makes the defeat so comprehensive. Harry had spent years presenting his legal campaign as a battle for justice and accountability. He had already achieved meaningful results elsewhere. In 2023, he won damages against the publisher of the Daily Mirror after a judge found unlawful information gathering in parts of that case. In January 2025, he settled his action against Newsgroup newspapers after receiving an apology and substantial damages. Those outcomes gave Harry something powerful. They gave him legal confirmation that his suspicions about sections of the tabloid industry were not always imagined. But this case was different. Associated Newspapers did not admit wrongdoing. There was no settlement before judgment. The allegations were tested through a lengthy trial, and when the evidence was examined article by article, every claimant's case failed. That does not erase Harry's earlier victories, but it does end the idea that every major legal battle he launches against the press must eventually vindicate him. And that is a significant change. For years, the legal campaign gave Harry a clear public purpose. He was no longer simply the prince who left Britain. He could present himself as the man willing to challenge institutions that other royals had avoided confronting publicly. He could connect his fight to Diana's experience with the press. He could connect it to Meghan's treatment, He could argue that he was confronting a culture that had shaped some of the most painful events of his life. But a moral mission and a successful legal case are not the same thing. A courtroom requires evidence capable of proving specific allegations against specific defendants, and this judgment repeatedly found that the necessary evidential bridge was missing. That creates a problem Harry cannot solve simply by saying his cause was righteous, because the judge did not rule that privacy abuse is acceptable. He did not rule that newspapers can break the law. He ruled that these claimants had not proved that associated newspapers committed the unlawful acts alleged in these particular cases. That is a much narrower conclusion than a complete moral vindication of the British press. But for Harry personally, it is still devastating. Then came his response. In a joint statement with Baroness Lawrence, Harry described the result as a complete and obvious whitewash. The statement argued that the decision was difficult to reconcile with the evidence presented and accused the court of going too far in exonerating the publisher. That language immediately opened a second conflict. Harry was no longer only challenging associated newspapers. He was publicly challenging the judgment itself. He is entitled to disagree. He may be able to consider an appeal if his lawyers identify proper legal grounds. A disappointed claimant does not have to pretend that he accepts every conclusion, but the tone creates a serious strategic risk. Harry has demanded accountability from newspapers, palace officials, and public institutions for years. Now a court has examined his allegations and rejected them. If his immediate response is that the result must itself be a whitewash, critics will ask whether Harry accepts accountability only when it confirms his own position. That perception could prove almost as damaging as the legal defeat, because public trust is not determined only by whether someone wins or loses. It is also shaped by how that person responds to losing. And now we arrive at the figure creating the most dramatic headlines: more than £50 million. Associated Newspapers says the combined legal expenditure across both sides exceeded £50 million and has announced that it intends to seek its costs. But that is not the same as saying Prince Harry personally owes £50 million. It is not proof that he owes £10 million, and it is not yet proof that he must personally pay any particular multi-million-pound figure. The court has scheduled a further hearing for July 29 and 30 to determine orders resulting from the judgment, including disputed cost issues. Till that process happens, confident claims about Harry's exact personal bill are speculation. But uncertainty does not make the financial danger disappear. It makes it more difficult to calculate. The judgment records that the court had earlier approved consolidated budgets of approximately £4.084 million for the claimants and £4.445 million for Associated for the remaining litigation through trial. Associated says the final combined spending became far larger as preparation expanded, and the trial lasted 11 weeks. How those costs will be divided, what will be recovered, and what Harry's individual responsibility will be remain unresolved. But one fact is already clear: a case that produced no legal victory may still produce a substantial financial consequence. That is the brutal equation now confronting Harry. Years of preparation, weeks inside the High Court, an enormous judgment, every claim dismissed, and a costs hearing still approaching. The financial implications inevitably create questions about Harry and Meghan's life in California. But this is where responsible reporting must separate pressure from fantasy. There is no verified public evidence that Prince Harry is bankrupt. There is no confirmed financial filing showing that the Sussex household has run out of money. And there is no responsible basis for declaring that this judgment will automatically destroy their marriage. Their private finances are not publicly available in enough detail to support those conclusions. In fact, RQL Productions extended its relationship with Netflix in August 2025 through a multi-year first-look agreement. The partnership has included documentary programming, Meghan's lifestyle series, and involvement with her As Ever brand. Their Spotify partnership ended in 2023. But it is inaccurate to claim that every significant commercial relationship has disappeared, or that absolutely no income remains. But the court defeat still creates a difficult business question. How much money, time and attention can be directed toward old legal battles while Harry and Meghan are attempting to build future-facing commercial projects? That is where the real pressure may develop. Meghan's recent public work has increasingly moved toward lifestyle programming, food, entertaining, products, and a softer California identity. That strategy attempts to create value without requiring another attack on the royal family. It tries to move the Sussex business away from palace conflict and towards something capable of surviving independently. Harry's strongest public causes, by contrast, remain Invictus, veterans, charitable work, security, press reform, and the emotional consequences of his royal past. Those are not illegitimate interests. But commercially and strategically, they create two different directions. One is trying to build a new consumer identity. The other remains connected to unresolved battles from an earlier life. That does not prove a marriage crisis, but any large and uncertain financial consequence can create difficult conversations inside a household. What was achieved? What will it cost? Could the risk have been avoided? Should another appeal be attempted? And how much of the family's future should continue to be tied to Harry's war against the British press? No outsider knows how Harry and Meghan are answering those questions privately. Anyone claiming direct knowledge without evidence should be treated cautiously. But the strategic tension is visible. Harry may see this case as a matter of principle. A business advisor may see it as an expenditure that produced no return. Meghan may fully support her husband. She may privately question the decision. Or the couple may be united in believing that the judgment was wrong. The truth is not publicly known. What is known is that the case has introduced another major uncertainty into a household already balancing security expenses, staff, charitable operations, media production, and an intensely scrutinized public life. And this is why the defeat is bigger than one courtroom result. It forces the Sussex project to answer a question it has avoided for years. What is the long-term identity of Prince Harry outside the royal family? The first years after leaving royal duties produced extraordinary global attention. The Oprah interview became an international event. The Netflix documentary gave the couple the opportunity to present their own account of leaving the monarchy. Harry's memoir, Spare, offered intimate stories involving Charles, William, Catherine, Camilla, and Harry himself. The public demand was obvious. People wanted to know what had happened behind palace walls. But royal revelation is a limited product. The first disclosure shocks the world. The second expands the story. The third risks repeating it. And eventually the audience begins asking what comes after the grievance. Harry cannot reveal the same family secrets indefinitely. Every new disclosure may generate attention, but it also reduces the possibility of rebuilding trust with the people being discussed. That creates the most dangerous commercial temptation of all. Another memoir, another documentary, another interview, another project promising to reveal the material that did not appear in Spare. There is no confirmation that such a project is being prepared. But the logic is obvious. Royal conflict has historically generated Harry and Meghan's greatest levels of public attention. If the legal defeat creates a significant bill, the fastest commercial response might appear to be another highly personal royal project. But that solution could become a trap. It might generate money while permanently damaging reconciliation. It might restore attention while weakening the Sussexes' attempt to establish an identity beyond royal controversy. And it might prove that their most valuable remaining product is still the family they left. Harry would then face an impossible choice. If he reveals more, he may destroy more trust. If he refuses, he must demonstrate that his public value can survive without another palace expose. That is the crossroads this judgment has made impossible to ignore. And then there is King Charles. Harry remains the king's son. No court judgment can remove that personal reality. Charles may wish to preserve or rebuild a private relationship, regardless of political criticism, media disputes, or commercial projects. But a return to the family is not the same as a return to royal duties. Harry and Meghan stepped away as working royals in 2020. They cannot simply decide to resume representing the crown because their circumstances change. Any official return would require trust, institutional agreement, and a clear role acceptable to the monarch and the wider royal household. The legal defeat does not automatically make a royal return more likely. it may make the situation more complicated. Harry has said his legal battles contributed to tensions with his father and brother. From the palace's perspective, the concern is larger than whether Harry wins or loses. It is whether private conversations, institutional disagreements, and family disputes can remain private. Trust cannot be rebuilt through one meeting. It cannot be restored through a public statement, and it certainly cannot be reconstructed while every difficult moment is followed by another interview, memoir, or legal confrontation. Prince William's position is especially important, but claims about his private feelings must not be invented. There is no verified evidence supporting dramatic declarations that William is secretly controlling every decision involving Harry, or that he has issued a permanent private ban. What is publicly clear is that the brothers' relationship has been seriously strained, and that William, as heir to the throne, has an institutional responsibility Harry no longer carries. William must think about the future crown. Harry can focus on his personal campaign. Those two perspectives are not always compatible. If Harry responds to the defeat by escalating through an appeal, another public attack, or additional royal revelations, the gap may widen. If he responds by stepping back, focusing on Invictus, and allowing time to pass without new accusations, the possibility of private trust may slowly improve. That is why his next move matters so much. The court defeat has left Harry with three possible directions. The first is continued confrontation. He can examine an appeal, continue challenging the result, and maintain that the legal system failed to deliver accountability. That path would preserve his image as a fighter. It would also risk more costs, more hostile coverage, and another painful defeat. The second is commercial reinvention. Harry could reduce the role of royal conflict in his public identity and focus on Invictus, veterans, humanitarian projects, and carefully selected media work. That path would be less explosive, but it would require proving that audiences remain interested when the royal family is no longer the central subject. The third is strategic retreat. Accept the judgment. Resolve the costs. Avoid another immediate legal escalation. Protect the marriage and children from public speculation. And begin rebuilding relationships privately rather than through statements. That might be the least dramatic option. It may also be the most difficult for a man who has spent years presenting persistence as a moral obligation. The judgment also carries consequences for journalism. Associated Newspapers has described the decision as an overwhelming victory for its journalists and for press freedom. The publisher can now say that the allegations were tested and rejected, but the judgment should not be transformed into permission for irresponsible reporting. It does not establish that British tabloids have never committed unlawful acts. Harry's previous legal victories demonstrate the opposite. It does not erase genuine victims of phone hacking, and it does not mean that every intrusion into privacy is ethically justified. The decision concerns whether these specific claimants proved these specific allegations against this specific publisher. The judge also made clear that the proceeding was civil litigation, not a public inquiry into the entire historical culture of Associated Newspapers. Still, the ruling strengthens an important journalistic principle. Private information can sometimes be obtained legally. A friend may speak, a publicist may brief, a palace aide may provide guidance, a source may call a reporter. Information may already exist in photographs, documents, or previous coverage. A story being uncomfortable does not prove it was hacked. A subject denying a report does not prove the journalist broke the law. And the inability to reconstruct a source 20 years later does not automatically prove criminal activity. That distinction protects legitimate reporting. It also places a responsibility on journalists to document their work carefully and behave lawfully. The victory is therefore not a declaration that the press can do whatever it wants. It is a warning that serious accusations require proof. Harry's legal campaign may now leave a complicated legacy. He helped expose genuine wrongdoing in earlier cases. He obtained damages and an apology in other battles. But in his final major action against a British newspaper publisher, he pursued allegations that the court found he could not establish. Both realities can be true. He was not wrong about every section of the press, but he was unable to prove this case. That nuance will be difficult to maintain in a public conversation driven by heroes and villains. Supporters will say the system protected a powerful newspaper, Critics will say Harry's entire campaign has been exposed as a vendetta. The judgment supports neither extreme. But emotionally, Harry may experience the defeat as something far larger. His conflict with the press is bound to Diana's death. It is connected to his fear that Meghan would experience the same destructive cycle. It is connected to relationships he believes were damaged by intrusion and suspicion. Losing this case may therefore feel to him like more than losing a legal argument. It may feel like the court rejected the story through which he has understood much of his adult life. And that is where the real danger begins. A person who treats defeat as information may change direction. A person who treats defeat as proof of a conspiracy may escalate. Harry's statement suggests that acceptance will not come easily. But the final consequences have not yet been written. The cost hearing is still ahead. Any appeal decision remains ahead. The commercial response remains ahead. The effect on his relationship with Charles and William remains ahead. And the private response inside Harry and Meghan's home remains unknown. This is not confirmed bankruptcy. It is not confirmed divorce. It is not the automatic collapse of the Sussex brand, but it is something more serious than an embarrassing headline. It is a moment of decision. Harry can continue investing his money, identity, and emotional energy in battles against the institutions he believes failed him. Or he can recognize that the campaign has reached a limit. He can continue trying to prove the past. Or he can build a future that does not depend on winning every old argument. He can answer this judgment with another war, or he can answer it with discipline. And that may be the most shocking consequence of all. Prince Harry entered the courtroom attempting to place Associated Newspapers on trial. He emerged with his own judgment under examination. Not only his judgment as a claimant, his judgment as a husband, his judgment as a businessman, his judgment as a son, and his judgment as a prince attempting to build a life after royalty. The court has already delivered its decision. Every claimant's case was dismissed. Now Harry must deliver his. And whether he appeals, retreats, or reveals more royal secrets may determine far more than the size of a legal bill. It may decide whether the Sussex project finally becomes independent of the royal family or remains permanently trapped inside the conflict that created it. So what should Harry do now? Continue fighting, appeal the judgment and refuse to surrender? Or accept the defeat, settle the costs, and finally move beyond the war that has defined his pastoral life? Share your answer in the comments, subscribe for the next royal update, and like this video if you believe the choice Harry makes now will be more important than the case he has already lost.